This video's gonna contain spoilers from the off, so I'm letting you know now. Well, after what was an incredible finale of Season 2 of Severance, and it being the one that deservedly earned the rating of becoming the second highest rated episode the show has ever produced, it concluded in a way that provided a lot of clarity for us, but it also allowed us to be left on a massive cliffhanger in true Severance style. With all of our hearts breaking for Gemma, many of us having our minds change on Innie, Mark and Helly, and Irving, well, just not being there. I thought it would be worth looking at what could potentially happen when the show returns for the third installment. So with that, let's discuss everything that could potentially happen in Severance Season 3. The Innie's perspective. One thing that was at the epicenter of Season 2 of the show was the value of the life of an Innie, and how outies essentially view them as disposable and inferior to them. And to be honest, that's kind of always been the case with how Innies did actually feel about themselves, as they never had the taste for much more in their life other than just being the corporate slaves that they were. So they themselves had the mindset of feeling inferior. But as we saw in the season finale, Innie, Mark and Helly took control and made the decision that the half a life that they had was worth fighting for, due to the fact that it was still some kind of life. And seeing as though nobody else was standing up for them, they felt like they had to do it themselves. That could be why the theory around the version of Helly at the end actually being Helena could be debunked, because despite it feeling like a cruel act in staring Gemma in the eye as Helly ran away with her husband, it could have been done because she simply realized that she didn't like the idea of no longer existing, and she wanted to be with the person that she loved. But anyway, I think the Innie's perspective is going to be something that'll take center stage in the Lumon uprising that's on the horizon, with the fact that they're going to fight for what they've got. I actually think with Helly being of interest to James and him saying that he saw Kia within her and that he didn't love Helena, as much as Helly doesn't like him, she might be able to use the way that he views her as advantageous in order to get into a position where she's in control. And that would mean that Helena could stay buried deep. Maybe the OTC protocol could be something that's applied for her, and with her caring deeply for Innie Mark, his safety and well-being could be something that's offered up in the deal too. Mark is obviously of no value to Lumon now due to Cold Harbor being completed, and with it potentially being void at the moment because the chip that was inside of Gemma was out of the building. They don't have any regard for him whatsoever. Pair that with the fact that his actions essentially started an uprising amongst the Lumon employees. He's now most definitely not a favorable person, so his safety feels like it could be part of a deal that gets cut. The dynamic of the Innie being the personality that's in the most control is a perspective that we've not truly had before, and I don't think we're going to see Outie Mark for a long while because I don't think Innie Mark is going to risk getting in the elevator, as he knows that Outie Mark would most likely never step foot in that building again. So rather than Lumon holding somebody hostage like what Season 2 was, it's going to be an Innie holding their Outie hostage, and the battle that's present there. If a deal does get struck between Helly and James Egan, it could mean that it might not all be set on the severed floor. If the OTC protocol gets implemented, we might see Helly and Innie Mark being able to live some kind of life outside the doors of Lumon, and they'll get a taste at a life that they've never had but have only been able to dream of. Something that I think could also be quite interesting is if we find out that Helly is actually pregnant. It was a massive theory that Helena could have been pregnant after what happened between herself and Mark at the Ortbo. Plus, as well as that, we also saw that Mark and Helly were intimate in episode 6 of Season 2. So what if Helly does end up being pregnant and we witness how an Innie deals with growing a life inside of them when they're not actually considered to be a whole person themselves? That would then mess even more with the whole dynamic of an Innie's life not being valuable when they're quite literally carrying a life inside of them. With James favouring Helly, he might well be intrigued by the fact that she's pregnant, and the idea of a successor coming from her might make him listen to her demands even more too. In an interview, Ben Stiller said, "We're going into a different tone here now. We're going to be going into a different reality for these people." That statement alone supports that the show will be going in a new direction when it does return. And this new reality could be one which has Mark and Helly on the outside potentially experiencing life like they've always wanted, and Helly also being pregnant too. The show went in a darker direction as Season 2 developed, and I think that same darkness will continue with the Innies holding power and no longer not being seen as true people. James values his daughter's Innie over his own daughter, so that could well change things. With Mark and Helly running off at the end, I think the entire first episode is going to be centered around the uprising, and that might also be an opportunity for us to meet different departments at Lumon. But what's going to be interesting about this uprising though is that Lumon still needs to exist in order for the Innies to survive. So they're not going to be trying to shut them down. I think they're just looking for more transparency and to be viewed and treated like actual people. So it's an interesting dynamic that could be explored for sure. The Outside of Lumon. When it comes to the outies and the people outside of Lumon, I think the focus will most likely be on Harmony Cobel, Devon and Gemma connecting, and then working on how they're actually going to bring Lumon down now, especially now that Gemma's outside. What I think will be particularly interesting though is that we'll see the hold that Lumon has over the authorities and the fact that it's not going to be easy for Lumon to be dismantled. Lumon has their fingers in a lot of pies, even the medical industry. And as much as they'll try to prove that Gemma was kidnapped, with her turning up, I don't actually think it will make that much of an immediate difference. But what I think it could do is it could potentially allow us to see the outside view of Lumon in herd mentality, and it could drive power amongst those people on the outside to look to bring the company down. We know that Lumon and the Severance procedure is something that is divisive. So Gemma being a figure that was captured, taken, and then tested on, and also Outside Mark being held hostage by his own Innie, it's a motivating factor to get the voices of protest to come out and go up against the company. Meaning Lumon might have a fight on two fronts, from the Innies inside the severed floor, and then also the people on the outside. It does also make me wonder if we'll see the likes of Bert appearing on this side too. We know that he had an apparent change of heart following him admitting to Irving that he used to be a goon for Lumon and that he'd drop people off and not ask a single question about their fate. So with him showing more redeeming qualities, with it looking like he sent Irving to safety, he might finally be ready to go against the very company that made him feel like he wanted to be severed so that he had a chance of going to heaven. That's just a thought for now though. Even though Gemma might be outside the doors of Lumon, I don't think that means she's necessarily safe. I think we could see Lumon looking to go after her still. Inside of her mind, she holds the Severance chip that's considered to be the greatest achievement the planet has ever created. So she's holding an asset of Lumon that they'll want to retrieve, whatever the cost. So I think that will definitely be interesting. Will we see Irving again? I think Irving's story is something that has to be explored in the next season of the show. Unless this was Severance's weird way of writing him out. After all, the Season 3 announcement video did have the 3-seated desk as the main focus. Maybe leaning into the fact that there are only going to be 3 characters from MDR in the next installment. Let's act like he's going to be in the next season though, because there's still a lot of Irving's story to tell. There were so many theories about if he was in fact reintegrated or had been tested on during Lumon's history, and that's why he could have had a brief recollection of the exports hallway. I feel that's a talking point that has to be addressed. He has a deep-rooted connection with the exports hallway, so he may well have gone through it all before. I also think we'll see the destination that he's gone to. All we know was that he was sent far away from where Lumon could get their hands on him, and that could be our chance to see a society that Lumon Industries hasn't been able to get their hands on. This would be the only time we've actually seen civilization in the show that hasn't been exposed to Kier's ways. So if that is the case, I'd love to know why it's like that and how they managed to keep Lumon at bay. We still don't know who it was that Irving was talking to on the outside when he was going to the phone booth, so that's also something that has to be answered as well. I imagine it's some kind of anti-Lumon group, and that could end up connecting to the story of Devon, Harmony and Gemma if Gemma's presence causes a storm on the outside. So I think Irving is definitely going to be coming back into the show, and who knows, he might end up linking with Harmony and co. Dylan's struggle. During Season 2, we saw that Dylan was struggling with existing, in the sense that he wanted to end things for himself because he didn't see a purpose in his life if Gretchen wasn't in it. But following his outie basically saying to him that he liked knowing that he existed and that Innie Dylan was causing outie Dylan to strive to be somebody better, it made him question his influence and what his actual role in life was. Dylan's life is that of a trap, in the sense that without Gretchen, he quite literally has nothing to live for because all of the joy that he had came from her. And with him being front and center during the shot of the rebellion during the finale, I think that shows the attitude that he now has, in the sense that he might well want to rebel against Lumon because he wants to be able to end things for good and not be forced into an existence that even he doesn't want. A different type of control to what Mark and Helly want. I do think that's quite a dark story though, so I don't know if that will be at the core of Dylan's journey. Or alternatively, he might go back to looking for a way to permanently be with Gretchen, as at the end of the day, if he's going to exist, he'll want to be with the person that makes him happy. Honestly, there are so many different directions that this next season could go in, and I'm not going to pretend that any of these are 100% right. But based on what we saw, I feel like some of these theories could be a direction that the show goes in. However, after watching the show, Severance is a TV series that genuinely surprises me week after week, so I think we're just going to have to wait and see. One thing I'm quite certain on though, is that I reckon there's going to be a dance scene. So, there you have it, Severance Season 3 Theories Explained. If you want to see every episode of Severance Season 2 being broken down, then click on the card in the top corner, there's a playlist there. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What do you think will happen? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.